Hi everybody, Joey Severini here from Mental Productions, and today I'm going to share my tips, tricks, and creative workarounds to save your film. Okay, so you've shot your film, you've got it in your editing bay, and when you sit down to look at the footage, you feel like it's just a mess. What do? Do you throw it out? Do you toss more money at it? Or do you find creative solutions to save the film? I've been making film, shorts, and TV for over 30 years, and though I've taken plenty of classes on post-production, it was in making my 2004 feature film Tonight that I truly learned how to complete a film. Let me take you all the way back to 2004. Britney Spears' Toxic was #1 on the radio, and Garden State was tearing up the box office. It was in that same year that I filmed a very tiny independent film called Tonight about a group of kids that were just running amok in their town the night of their senior prom. I was able to assemble a small cast and crew and make my dream come true. We filmed for 1 week, and as soon as it was done, over the next 7 months, my friend Esh and I edited a nice little rough cut. And then the unthinkable happened. The hard drive blew. Back in 2004, hard drive prices were astronomical, at least for me, so we didn't have a backup of any sort. Needless to say, I was devastated, so I took a little time off. And so, the film sat there, until over a decade later when I unboxed the footage and started from scratch. But with fresh eyes, I began seeing that the original script was not the masterpiece that I thought it was. Plus, more than anything, this was a very, very, very low budget film, so a lot of shots were dark, footage was grainy, audio was missing, it was in the wrong aspect ratio, and honestly, some bits just really weren't funny to me anymore. It was a mess. It had every obstacle working against it. But I loved the characters and the acting, and still believed it could see the light of day, so I began a 7-year run of just kind of tinkering with it in the background. And what I learned is what I want to share with you today. My wife will attest that I spent way too much time on this film. Which is true. But during that process, I learned some really cool and fun tricks that helped me complete the film. So I decided to make this video in hopes it'll help other filmmakers. Believe me, if my film can be saved, any film can. So let's get started. Okay, the initial edit. Now the film I'm talking about was my first feature film, and my inexperience showed. I definitely undershot. Completely undershot. So when I got it to the editing bay, I had to treat every single frame of that thing like it was gold, because that's all I had to work with. That meant I had to reuse scenes, slow down shots, slow down reused scenes. I even went back and started using outtakes. Honestly, a lot of those moments were my favorite parts because it was kind of like genuine reactions. Just remember that everything can be used. So if you feel like you're out of footage, try revisiting the original footage to see if there's any audio, video, or even just ideas that you can use. What's written on the page doesn't have to be what ends up in the final cut. If a series of scenes aren't working, try reordering them. For instance, in Fight Club, the scene where, spoiler, Ed Norton beats himself up in his office was intended to be later, but by moving it to the pick a fight sequence, that adjustment helped the movie flow a little better, plus added an extra laugh. When doing your initial edit, don't be precious. It's very hard. Sometimes cutting a scene a little bit early is just what the film needs. If you love an extended scene so much, just keep it and use it as an extra. To that end, can the whole film be shorter? It's a full-length film? Does it need to be? Wouldn't it be better having a tight short film rather than a long, meandering full-length? I know it's tough to consider, but if you really are struggling, then it's worth a try. What I like to do is I like to do a complete export and just try to chop it up from that export. I do this a lot. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's worth a try. It sometimes only takes a couple minutes. B-roll is an amazing tool. B-roll can save your whole film. It certainly saved mine. I love Back to the Future, but the bulk of the action sequences of the car were really just B-roll. Now, if you can go back and get pickup B-roll with your actual actors, that's fantastic. But I didn't have that luxury. That meant I used lots of B-roll cutaways of hands doing like little things. But I only had me and my wife. So we ended up playing every character. Another big portion of B-roll were digital cutaways and exterior shots. Even some miniatures. If you don't want to film it yourself, there are plenty of great stock footage sites. But for me, it's way more fun to do it myself. So make a shot list and be your own second unit. Bonus filming tip. When budgeting your props and costumes, first see what you can borrow or get cheaply. But if you have to buy stuff, try to do it from big box stores. Walmart, Target, whatever. Their return policy is excellent. For instance, in the scene with the pool, after shooting, I returned it and got my full money back. Cha-ching! When your story is still lacking clarity, sometimes title cards are the way to go. I ended up adding location titles to help guide the audience since my film covered a lot of locations and times, but it also helped me trim some exposition that kind of killed a scene.
No, what? No. My cousin Danielle and her girlfriend go to school in Parkside. No, what? No.
Digital and composite scenes. Sometimes your film calls for a specific shot that's just too hard to get or too expensive to get. That's when you might want to consider computer-generated or composite shots, like matte paintings. My Tonight film had a few shots that I just could not achieve in reality, so I did them digitally. Since my film was already a little cartoony, I was able to get away with a more rudimentary style, but obviously it depends on the film. I'd only suggest this in certain situations, but if it's the only way, it's the only way. Narration. When all else fails, narration. I utilized everything I've mentioned so far, and my film still had some holes that needed clarity. So I ended up adding a narrator. Not ideal, but it will save you in a pinch.
Oh really? Come on!
Now we're going to talk about the overall look of the film. And one obstacle you might encounter is bad footage. My Tonight film was shot in 2004 on an old rickety GL1 camera, at night, in the dark, with bad lighting, which means almost every single shot was grainy. Luckily, nowadays there's tons of programs that will help improve or fix grain. The program I ended up using was Neat Video, and I think it was like $100, and it was a huge lifesaver. However, even after that, there were still some shots. It was really grainy. There were still shots that were just too grainy to even really make out. By far, the grainiest scenes were all the ones that took place in the karaoke bar. And originally, half the film took place in that karaoke bar. I did my best with the important scenes and then cut out the rest. But instead of cutting all the remaining footage, I kept it and used it in a montage. This not only helped move the story along, but I was also able to scale down the shots and made them a little bit easier to make out. So another useful reminder, if you have extra footage, maybe you can use it in a montage. In some cases, you might want to embrace your graininess in things like security cameras, POVs, or flashbacks. I used all of these, but of course it depends on the story. Another bonus filming tip. When filming, if you can, always try to get some reaction shots. Looking to the left, looking to the right, looking up, smiling, being mad. You never know when you can use it in the edit. Sometimes when you're editing, you find a couple shots that aren't working only because of something very, very small, like somebody breaking character in the background or something in the shot that shouldn't be there. But no shot should be useless just because of one small aspect. Instead, you can cover or remove the item. That's what I did. I took characters out of shots, tripods out of frame, blurred things, whatever made the shot useful. In some cases, I spent more time on these tiny details than the more noticeable ones. You can even adjust items like lights turning on and off, or flopping a character to have them talk to a different character. The matte tool can definitely be your friend. I learned this, again, from the Fight Club commentary. Fincher mentioned he loved different reactions for particular scenes, so he just combined them. I used this a bunch of times in Tonight. I even used it to fix some blown out portions of shots. I even added a joke in post that made a character drive away from another character by split screening it and reversing the footage. It can also be used in shots where the scene just needs a little bit more. I did this for a scene in the coffee shop where Summer wasn't as centered as I would have liked, and I was going for a more like Wes Anderson-y thing. So I ended up taking a portion of the background, flipping it, and putting it on the reverse side so she was more centered. This also works for adding images to the foreground. Here, the actress stopped a little farther than I would have liked, and to help, I added a pillar to cover her and just added a little blur to give it more depth. Subtitles. Again, I used every tactic I've been mentioning, and still there were a few scenes that just needed a little extra help to be heard, so I literally added word bubbles and subtitles to a couple parts. Obviously not the best workaround, but you gotta do what you gotta do. Silence. Sometimes the best solution is silence. Does your shot need audio? If your actor's body language is telling enough of the story, then maybe you can cut the audio in that scene and put music over it. Another subtle tactic I used was in long takes. Simply put, I just added a long, subtle zoom in or zoom out. I love this because it's not really noticeable, but it does give a nice flow. However, I suggest not zooming more than 25%. Coloring. Again, I used everything. Adding a color filter to some footage can help grainy footage look clearer, much the same way as night vision. I used this too, but I knew it would get old if you're just watching one color, so I broke it up by colors. So I had a couple scenes that were red, blue, a couple that are green. Can part of your grainy footage be repurposed? As you're finishing your film, you might find yourself looking for cinematic elements from filters that will complete the desired look. You can of course add vignetting, color filters, film filters. I don't know if anybody else does this, but an extra method I used for some of my scenes was manually going in and adding blur to the background. Oh, it's tedious, but sometimes it's needed to give some shots more depth. Now I want to focus on the most important aspect. Audio. Audio for my Tonight film was pretty terrible in most parts, which was a huge burden. If you have less than ideal audio, obviously first step is to try to clean it up. For my film, I used Soundtrack Pro, my editing software's audio filters, and the Adobe AI speech enhancer for the worst offenders, but I am far from an expert on it.
Can we talk for a minute? Can we talk for a minute?
I literally had a few scenes where the audio just simply didn't record.
You know you look like an idiot. What?
And I had to use the audio from an additional camera that just happened to be using on set.
You know you look like an idiot, right? What? Oh, this?
For Tonight, I used everything to cover audio. I added songs to the radio, added Walla.
Just put that anywhere, pal. Yeah, it's safe.
I even had a scene at night with some major audio issues, so I added owls. Lots of owls! Additional dialogue was another huge lifesaver for me. I remember listening to a commentary track once where they were talking about Jumping Jack Flash being saved completely in post by all the ADR that they added.
Speed it up, pal, my kid's gotta poop.
And I had way too much fun with this. Again, since I couldn't get the actors back, I literally had my wife add some crucial lines as the different actresses to help solve some edit issues.
We need to talk. Pull over to the next parking lot.
Call me creamy goodness!
Not this again. Can you drive us to prom?
I also played a character in the film, which was a huge help. So I had the luxury of adding some of my own ADR. Just had to crank it a little higher. Along with character ADR, sometimes there's information that the story is missing that your audience needs. Can you add an off-camera news report or radio bite giving this information? Obviously, it depends on the film, but Sound effects. Okay, I love sound effects. I just love the clicking of something turning on, or door slams, revving car engines, and anything else. These are all opportunities to make your film feel more alive. And they're a lot of fun. A part that I love for some reason is Rocco is giving money to his dream girl, and in post, I just added a bunch of change, like he's throwing her change. It's small, but it makes me laugh. There was one take that was perfect, except for 1 millisecond, where the character seemed to forget her line for just a second.
So, what is the deal with you and her?
But with the power of sound, now it sounded like she was reacting to a car passing.
So, what is the deal with you and her?
Your recorded audio can only get you so far, though. The scenes need to feel alive. I had an awesome teacher named Bo who reminded us that everything in the scene can make a noise. You're outside at night. There's crickets, there's cars, there's a fluorescent light in the corner that can make a hum, whatever. Things like that. If the audio is bad, you can either lower it or cover it. I did both. Use stings. They're fun. Sting, audio stings, can also be a great way to save the end of a scene if you need a little button.
Your turn, Nancy.
Just try to use them sparingly. So you want your film to feel big and real, so of course you need every Beatles song. No, a large portion of film budgets can go to music copyrights. And while I battle this all the time, at the end of the day, if you're working on a low budget film, you can't use copywritten music. Luckily, there's a ton of sites that have cheap or free music, but my favorite solution is putting out a call to your friends and social media. There are millions of musicians dying to get their music heard, and this can be a great marriage. Alternately, sometimes you just want to do it yourself. In my film Tonight, oh, you've heard about it? I wanted music to be playing all the time in the car and all the time in the karaoke scene. So I literally sat there for a day taking free instrumental music from online or keyboards and just started adding vague words. It was so much fun. And it totally worked. There was one scene where I wanted a Michael McDonald type song, kind of like a love song going on the radio. So I took a free instrumental song and I just mumbled like Michael McDonald.
So,
In another part, I wanted a Bee Gees song. So again, I sat there with a free instrumental track and I did my best Bee Gees while I was reading the IMDb to Small Wonder. That happened. It took only a couple of minutes and it was insanely fun. It's your movie. You can do anything. Jazz it up.
Frank says hi.
When finishing your film, jazz it up. It's a movie. It's not real life. Nobody cares. You can add anything. Improving color, sky replacement, and obviously lens flares. Lens flares, lens flares. Pew, 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 pew. Use what you got. Think about what you have at your disposal. Do you live near some unique buildings? That can be exterior shots. Do you have friends that can do a celebrity voice? That can be a narrator or a voice on the TV. I have an amazing friend who does animation, so I ended up adding a couple of animated sequences to the film. The idea is to put all you can into your film. Which leads me to my favorite solution, the wild card.
Wild card, bitches!
This should definitely be in case of emergencies, but this is the idea of adding an unplanned element to your film. Can you add nature elements, such as rain? Can you take a daytime scene and make it into night? What if you added a supernatural element? Ooh. It's solely for the filmmaker that's tried everything to improve their film and they still feel like it needs one major missing element. My Tonight film is about a bunch of kids having a wild night in a small town. But there was a moment where I seriously considered adding an alien invasion. I just thought it would be funny to have all these kids worried about their little crushes and lying to their parents while epic alien ships were destroying buildings in the background. Ultimately, I didn't do this, but sometimes thinking outside the box with an unexpected element might be just what makes your story stand out. While I didn't add UFOs, I did add fireworks to the final act, which I do think added fun and tension. Obviously, you're not going to use everything I've mentioned, but these are ideas to consider if you have a film that needs help being completed. Just remember that this is your film. You have to watch it more than anybody else, so might as well make it fun for you to watch. I'm very happy with my silly little movie, but of course today I would have shot the whole thing on an iPhone for like $100. C'est la vie. Sometimes it's better to give up, sometimes it's better to start over, but if I did, then the work my crew and cast did back in 2004 would never be seen, so I'm glad I put in the time to get it creatively finished. I truly hope that something I've mentioned here helps you complete your film, or at least give you something to consider for your next film. These are what worked for me. If you have any cool tips, tricks, or workarounds that worked for you, please leave them in the comments. Thank you for watching. I'm Joey Severini from Mental Productions. See you next time.